I think it's probably the most devastating that we've seen in the last 25 years. Now, according to most of the data that we are getting, 31 or 54 countries in the continent will experience negative growth. And this is, on the back of some of these countries already experiencing debt stress. Zambia defaulted on its debt. Kenya doesn't look great. South Africa, even before COVID, and as you heard on the top, the situation doesn't look great. It has crossed 1 million mark, right after Christmas. And so all this brought together because of the demand shocks, because of all the restrictions that were imposed, and as well as supply shocks because of lack of export, particularly for countries that are reliant on oil, that is Nigeria and Angola, as well as countries that rely extensively on tourism, that is Lesotho, Gambia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mauritius. All these brought together has adversely hit African economies.
Right.
Whereas, as far as COVID numbers, it doesn't look bad because of the restrictions that were put in place. So most of the African economies will be in very difficult situation as we head into the new year.
Now, we have seen, of course, this variant of COVID in South Africa. Talk about the response and the potential economic implications given these new restrictions.
For South Africa, I think this couldn't come at the worst. It came at a worst time. Already, the South African economy was reeling from multiple problems: the corruption in various sectors, the energy crisis, as well as the economy that was going in the opposite direction. The new restrictions that have been imposed, while necessary and will save a lot of lives, it will have a very adverse impact on the livelihood. So South Africans should brace themselves for a very difficult year ahead. And there are others who are saying, the economy could, shrink by as much as 8%, which will not look really great. South Africa relies a lot on export. South Africa relies a lot of tourism, international tourism. If all of those are curtailed, South Africa's economy will be in a very, very difficult position.
And as you mentioned, some of the existing issues that were just then exacerbated by the pandemic. So as we look at the unevenness of the distribution of vaccines in some of these poorer economies compared to wealthier ones, what does that mean for Africa's economic outlook for 2021?
Africa's economic outlook for 2021 would be very, very bleak, to put it very plainly, because even with the vaccine, which raised a lot of expectation, most of African countries are not going to receive those vaccines. The facility that was put in place by WHO and over 100 countries, the COVAX, that facility doesn't take care of most of the countries. The money that the facility was meant to raise, around 5 billion, it only raised 1.8 billion, and that was for 220 million doses against a population of 1.3 billion. And they need, according to the CDC Africa director, at least 60% of the population being vaccinated for it to carry the other 40%. So that just projects a very uncertain situation. The most painful part is some of these vaccines are manufactured in South Africa, and some of South Africans might not receive those vaccines. Those vaccines have already been signed up by other countries in Europe for distribution. That, what this COVID has done, therefore, it makes an already fraught economy,
right,
or lines of inequality very, very, very clear.
So then, just very quickly then, what is this focus on spending for COVID meant for international investment in Africa? Where does that stand?
So last year, the foreign direct investment accounted for 2% of Africa's GDP in 2018. That will decline. It will decline because, the biggest trader is China. And, China has pulled back on some of, Belt Road Initiative. As a result, that also presents a very huge challenge for the African countries.